Hello and welcome to Agri Talk. Today we've got Kingsley Meyer filling in for Mike, and welcome Kingsley. Today we're going to talk about a bigger cloud, if you would. We're talking about trees, a whole canopy of trees, I think. So I think that's a big thing we're going to talk about today.
I'm good with trees.
You are, and you've had land management practices for how long? You've been growing your crop of trees?
23 years I've managed a tree farm on our property just 5 miles from Rio Grande. And,
Yeah.
You know, last weekend I split about a cord and a half, and so it's close at hand.
Awesome. Can't beat that. Well, forest is kind of dear to my heart as well. My father and everybody, we grew up with trees, and he was a forester, and he was a logger, I should say, not a forester back then. And so we're going to have a good discussion. So today we have Dave Aspley. He's a native of Jackson, right? And Dave, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your title, how long you've been with the university, and
Okay.
what are you doing now?
Okay, thanks, Dwayne. Again, my name is Dave Apsley. I'm a forester, natural resource specialist for Ohio State University Extension, and I've been in Ohio since 1995. I moved here to teach at Hocking College in the forestry program, and in 2000, December of 2000, I started work for OSU Extension.
Gotcha.
And my major role with OSU Extension is to do woodland owner outreach and to focus mainly on the woodlands in Ohio. I was initially hired to work in the southern part of the state, but we only have 2 extension foresters statewide, so I cover a lot of ground, mainly do extension education programs in that region. So.
Awesome. So when you talk about education, let's start there. And what do you consider education of trees? Are you just walking out in the woods, or are you having classes, or how do you handle your education part?
Well, for us, with only two educators doing forestry work, we do a lot of educational programs. We do things on the web. We do publications, and then I do some applied research as well. So a little bit of all that. And one of the things I've been doing lately is a lot of collaboration with partnering agencies to try to get that multiplier effect and to get, to be able to do some programming and work with our Division of Forestry folks or our Forest Service folks and try to educate them, and then we get kind of a multiplier effect. I've done logger training as well and professional forester training as well, so so it's all of that.
Nice.
I know, being a tree farmer, I first had experience with going to the Division of Forestry and Department of Natural Resources, and that was my first contact with somebody that indoctrinated me into the tree farm system. I started getting my Ohio Woodlands magazine and read through not only about the species feature of the month, but also invasive species, pests and things that are coming in. And I have learned so much without being formally trained. Never went to college to do that, and only having a biology degree and doing dendrology with my professor didn't prepare me to take care of woods and understand, the responsibilities of maintaining it and just how much work it is.
Yeah. So dendrology, that's probably a term a lot of people aren't familiar with, but that's really the study of trees, and that's one of my passions. I love to teach tree ID classes, and that's a good place to start. We've actually got one, I think, scheduled. I think it's July 28th up at Hocking College, where we're going to spend a day on the basics of tree ID. The Woodland Journal is another thing. I write a lot of those features on the different species. I started doing that a few years ago, so that's another avenue that we use the Woodland Journal to get the word out.
Not only that you write there, you also have a little blog post that you do.
I do.
And if we can bring that up just to show people as well, there's a variety of things that Dave talks about, from just tree to also, like you said, pest. Even you talk about some birds and things that are in there too. So
a lot of the focus of the blog site is it's southeastern Ohio woods. I don't know if folks realize it, but Ohio's about 1/3 forested. And 2/3 of that forest is, guess where? It's down in the Appalachian counties. It's down in the south and the eastern part of the state. So we've got counties, one just to our east here, or west, I'm sorry, Lawrence County, it's 80% forested. Vinton's 80% forested.
Wow.
So on average, the counties down here probably are over 60% forested.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of our focus. It's a resource. It's important to our economy. And so that's a real focus. The website that you brought up, or the blog site, is mainly what I use to promote a lot of our educational programs.
Right.
And we have a series of programs that we base mostly out of Vinton County up to the Vinton Furnace State Forest, but we do programming in Southeast Ohio, and that's a good place to just get the word out about those programs. And we do have other stuff on the site as well.
Roughly how much, let's say in Lawrence or in Vinton County, are in private ownership, either somebody living there as a resident or absentee landowner?
I haven't broken it out by county, but for Ohio, about somewhere between 5 and 10% of our forested land is owned by governments. And then about 80% is owned by private. And I think right around 70 are private individuals, farmers, family forest owners. And then you've got a chunk of private industry, like the old Mead Paper Company lands, or AEP holds land.
Right.
And that makes up the 100%. But by far the bulk are private individuals like you and me. I own 30 acres of woodland up in Jackson County, and that's the bulk of who owns and manages.
I drive down 325 and I see some, Mead Paper back into pines after I think 2 cycles since I've been here, and then U.S. Forest Service, little parts of the Wayne here and there.
Yeah, the Wayne has, I think, around 200,000 acres of woodland, and the state has about the same amount, and most of the state forest land is down here, and all of the Wayne, of course, is down in southeastern Ohio. The Mead land has changed hands multiple times. The company is now Gladfelder, but it's actually in a timber investment company, so the company doesn't own those lands or manage them anymore.
Interesting.
One of the first things that impressed me as a landowner from our service forester and people that advised me as being a tree farmer is my responsibilities to get good advice. And I'm always amazed that they will come out to my property and spend a day with me and tell me how I should manage, but not tell me what to do.
Right.
And I feel this awkwardness, comfortable awkwardness, saying like, you're the landowner, this has to meet your family's needs, and you can do this or you can do that, but it will be up to you. And I'm looking to make sure that I make it past my inspection and get recertified, and I'm just like, oh, I want to be good. I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
But that person can't tell me that that is what I have to do.
Right.
First of all, I don't know.
There could be multiple ways to make that same.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
There are.
we go over those.
Yeah, tons of them.
One thing to keep in mind, you're one of the few and elite landowners, because probably less than 10% of Ohio woodland owners, and I don't know what the number is now depending on how you count woodland owners and what size acreage we talk. At one time they said there were 300,000 woodland owners in Ohio, but that was when they were counting down to 1 acre size. I think they bumped that up to 5 or 10, and now it's under 200,000. But only 5 or 10% of those people actually have a plan and look at that property as a resource that they can manage. So to me, that is a big part of it, to realize you've got something there, you've got different goals, and every woodland owner is different. Most of us aren't in it for timber. Of course, having some income is nice sometimes, but we've got all these goals, and what you should do, or hopefully do, is work with a forester to set out your goals, and then they can help you. Okay, here's some tools, here's some techniques you can use to reach your goals, and that's what woodland management is. It's carrying your woodland from point A to point B over time and working with that forester to get there.
I was an old outdoor education person from residential, programs, and after working with YCC and stuff, my goals were a little bit more than just I have to get myself some woods. I need to own some of this myself. We're fortunate here at Rio Grande to have a wildlife program headed by Dr. Don Altoff, and he has flying squirrel nesting boxes on the property and gets the students out. And nice. I have put a lot of trails out there, and my greatest joy is, and I warn you, if you ever come to visit me, we're going up into the woods.
Yeah.
And that, getting people outside to do some recreation and to see the management, unfortunately, I talk too much and have to tell people the story of well, this is what we thinned out and did a crop tree release 5 years ago, and this is my next area here. And
yep. Well, it's interesting because we cross paths a lot and we've never met before today, but Dr. Don Altoff was a colleague of mine at Hocking College back when I started and worked there. So we've kept in touch a little bit. And with our Day in the Woods programming that we do at the Vinton, we recently did a program, a night program on wildlife, which is cool to be in the middle of a 16,000 acre block of forested land with no light pollution and to be out in the woods.
wow.
But
I'm
Don,
jealous.
but Don came out and he has flying squirrel boxes out there, and the participants actually got to watch him band and work with those flying squirrels. So we're bringing people like Don and all these partners in. The last program that we did, the second Friday of May, we had mist nets up, and the wildlife biologists caught songbirds and talked about how they band and the importance of that, and then the habitats that these songbirds are involved, or that they require or depend on. So it's kind of a neat tie with Don. He's
You know,
doing some
I
great
apologize
work
for not going out to some of the field days because I think I'm aware of that.
You're doing it.
But you know, that's such a great outreach, and people look at it not only as educational, but it's an event. It's something for people to do, to get out with their family and understand their responsibility to take care of their land and to kind of plan for what happens to the next generation as estate planning.
Right.
That's a good segue too. We have pretty limited resources, but I'm a firm believer that legacy planning and how you're going to transfer this land is something that a lot of us need to think about. It's hard, really hard discussion to broach, but we are, as part of a collaborative with some northeastern states, are coming out with a fact sheet that's tailored for Ohio to help people get connected, and so we're coming up with lots of topics for the future, but that's one that I think we could focus on, and really people need to start planning and thinking about what's going to happen to that property.
Dave, we're going to discuss that topics and
Sounds
some
great.
other things here in a minute. We're talking with Dave Aspley, and we're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back. Hey, thanks. We're talking with Dave Aspley, local forester here with OSU Extension. And Dave, we were talking about passing the forest on, and down the family. I'll say that. But in the meantime, you've got a program that you've got, a Day in the Woods.
That's correct.
That I think that might help that family if they would go to this and give them some ideas. So we've got a flyer up on the screen right now. Tell us just a little bit about this Day in the Woods and what you might see there.
So the Day in the Woods program started, this is the 6th year. We've done over 40 programs, and we average about 40 people at those events.
Yeah.
We do them in southeastern Ohio. We base it out of the Vinton Furnace, but we move it to different locations. We're going to be at Hocking College twice this year. But there's a second Friday of the month from May through November, and we'll have some extra ones thrown in too. So we have 8 to 10 a year. $10 for the day. You usually start about 9 o'clock, end about 3:30, and we have a nice lunch, catered lunch in as part of that. Tough to do, but all our partners pitch in, and we were able to keep it in that budget so that landowners can come. And the typical model is we'll usually have the professionals come in and talk about whatever the topic, like Dr. Altoff talking about his flying squirrel research. So we'll spend some time in the classroom in the morning, but we always go to the field. And we have wagons, and we have the ability to get people out into the woods.
Right.
My favorite part of the day and part of the deal is we typically have 6 to 8 natural resource professionals. So if it's a songbird workshop, we'll have the bird biologist, but we'll have 2 or 3 foresters in the mix. We'll have other land managers and forestry types in the mix from all the different agencies, from private lands, from industry. And then that gives landowners the opportunity when they're on the wagon or in the classroom or having lunch to interact with those folks. And so it gives people that opportunity to not only get the educational program, but get the one-on-one interaction too. So
that's awesome. So back to the passing the forest down. You probably talk about that in that some, or maybe people will ask you about that. I'm gonna say that.
We certainly get that question.
Yeah.
Not as often as we probably should, and we have done a couple programs over the years focusing on that. frankly, it's hard to get a turnout because people don't like to think about and talk about that.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about that. But you know, you have to think about that as, you know, well, you know, they'll hand their house or their stuff down. In our area, like you said, it's mostly forested. Yeah. That's a valuable resource. That's a pot of money. That's a, you know, whether you look at it that way or not, and you have to manage that pot of money the same way as you would money.
And it's probably a lot of times it's the biggest asset we have. And so you need to think about the future if you have heirs that you want to pass it on. And if, like me, I've got 3 kids.
Right.
One has more interest in it than the other. So you need to just have those discussions and then think about, you know, I've invested 17 years of my life on my woodland, and Kingsley's had, I don't know, 20 some, you said?
Yeah.
And so what are your hopes after you pass on, and what do you hope to happen? And there's different things. You can pass it on to your heirs. You can also put things like conservation easements that kind of limit that, you know, maybe it can't be subdivided and built into a housing complex, but you would like to see it as a working forest or however you want. It doesn't mean it's locked up and nothing can be done. But there are lots of options, and it takes a team approach. You probably want to work with a forester, a lawyer, you know, someone that can help you with that estate planning. So it's definitely a topic where unfortunately we just don't have anybody that specializes in it, but we're working on it, and we do have a fact sheet coming out soon.
We were getting married, and we know we wanted to have no light pollution, no sound pollution, but we wanted to be able to hear screech owls. We wanted to have our bluebird trail so that we could, you know, have, you know, fledgling bluebirds. You know, I personally, you know, if I couldn't hear a pileated whack away at the woods, I would feel a little bit. And fortunately, I had a realtor that was looking after my best interests and said, you need to call the number and just simply say you're interested in this property, and then go down over lunch. And I was looking at an absentee landowner who had retired, moved to California, and nobody in the family wanted that property. And so they took a small wedge of it on the road easement, kept it, but the rest of the property out of an 80-acre, you know, north half of the southeast corner of Section 10, they sold. And I went like, oh, this is great. Here's where they loaded the logs, and I had the old, you know, loading area. But the rest of it was in regrowth. And, you know, I didn't know much about it, but I said, there's nothing level here. It's all on a slope.
It's Southeast Ohio.
But you know, this is my opportunity to own a piece of it. And after I found out from, you know, our contractors whether or not I could build, whether I had water, what school district I was in, and electric and all that, I called the service forester and I said, I need you to come out to tell me whether or not I can, you know, manage this. And they were very helpful in providing a written plan. I spent the whole day out there walking with a service forester, and it taught me about my land. It taught me about the history of it and the different things that have happened. And we found an old well. You know, we found vernal ponds where I knew the spring peepers would be, and God, I love that place.
Absolutely. It's my therapy. That's kind of the way I look at it. You know, you have a bad week and you just go spend some time in the woods, even if it's splitting your firewood. It's kind of a good way to relax and get out and get some exercise.
And for us, which is our background is technology, we really need to get off the grid. And that is such a benefit, I think.
Well, see, I didn't know that you were a forest owner.
I'm not a forest owner, but I have around me, and then I grew up. Yes, I've been in the logging industry for all my life. In a nutshell.
And
I think it's a good life balance.
Yeah, it is. And I went into the career of forestry. Actually started out with YCC2. There's another connection. That's what got me connected. But I went into forestry to be in the woods, and unfortunately I spend more time in the desk and in a car than in a classroom. But today I had the opportunity to go to the Vent and Furnace, and we kicked up a whippoorwill and found her eggs. So, you know, that's one of those things that you don't just see every day, and that's pretty phenomenal. It was a neat experience. So she did that wounded act so that she drew us away from the nest. Pretty similar. Yeah. She acts like she's injured to lure you away. So.
Okay. Well, we'll have to talk more off
Oh,
camera.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to a question that we kind of touched at the beginning, or you did. What is a forest, and define it? Is it a 1 acre? Is it 5 acres? Where would a person start? Say, I own we've got a couple acres, but there's only 30 trees on the place. That's something that I don't know as that would be. Yeah, I might come and bug you because I know you, but I probably wouldn't bug a service forester for that.
Yeah, well, it really depends on you and what your goals are, but in the Forest Service, different agencies have different definitions, but when it comes to a management size piece of property,
Right.
There are a couple property tax reduction programs. One's the Ohio Forest Tax Law program that the Division of Forestry administers, and they have a 10-acre minimum.
Okay.
So if you have a home on it, they even subtract an acre out for that. So you
For
need
that
about
home.
11 acres
Okay.
to be able to qualify for that.
Gotcha.
And then the other program, the CAUV, Current Ag Use Value Program, it's mainly for agricultural purposes and row crops and such, but they also have a program for woodland management too. And
Yeah.
about 10 acres, I think, is pretty much that cutoff point where you get much smaller than that, you can't do a whole lot of active management, but even a 5 acre or a couple acre, you can sure enjoy Mother Nature and spend time out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a 10-acre we'll call it an 11-acre minimum. And then what's an average that you deal with for landowners around here as far as size, and what do you do for them typically? Do you go in and mark these trees and go, this tree needs to come out, this tree needs to stay?
Well, I don't do a lot of that.
Yeah.
I do the education.
You do the
programs.
education part of it.
But I work with the service foresters and help with the educational programs. And
Right.
part of our goal with like Day in the Woods is make them aware of these resources so that they can take advantage of them. So usually the starting point with a forester, and I should mention too, Division of Wildlife has private lands biologists who can help add to that mix and give you more of a wildlife bent. But they typically will work with you as the landowner, and the real goal is to have a plan. They can give you an idea where you're at a point in time. Here's what your condition of your forest is. They marry that up with your goals and objectives. And then they can say, okay, if you want to get from here to here, here's some things you can do to help improve it. You might not be aware, but you've got an invasive plant out here that may be a concern down the road. Let's start dealing with that. So they can provide the advice. They can help you write the plan. And then with that plan, there are some potential cost share opportunities out there to do like invasive species control.
Yeah.
Or if your forest is too dense, do some thinning, favor different trees.
Grapevines.
Grapevines. We have a program now. I'm doing a lot of collaborative work with Forest Service and Division of Forestry on oak management.
Okay.
And so they had a special cost share program for folks doing practices that help manage and favor oak. So, by getting that connection, getting the management plan, you can become eligible for some cost share opportunities.
It sounds like a variety.
And the big thing too is both of those programs give you a significant tax break on your property taxes as well. So forest tax law is a 50% reduction in your property taxes that you pay on your wooded acres, not your home, just the wooded acres. And then the CAUV is usually even a little bit higher percentage of savings than that. So
I've got so many questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
Just to
Well,
pick his brain.
there's so many things that that we're going to have. And Dave, we've got another website up, the
Yes.
Ohio Society of American Foresters. Tell us what that does.
So this is a directory, and I'm biased, I'm a forester,
Sure.
but I think there's value in foresters, and foresters bring a unique perspective. And when it comes to a timber harvest, and some of these points in time that it may only happen once or twice in your lifetime, it's good to get some assistance. So this is a directory of members of the Society of American Foresters, and we've got consulting foresters listed who are there to help you on your property. Obviously, you work with them for a fee. In the middle, we have industry foresters that work for forest industry. They might work for a paper mill or a sawmill,
Yep.
and they're foresters that can provide good advice, but when it comes to buying and selling timber, they're representing their company, so we
Right.
really usually recommend going to the consultant.
Right.
And then on the far right of that website, we've got our service foresters. So ODNR Division of Forestry has a service forester assigned to each county in Ohio. And so that's always my recommendation as a good starting point. Connect with that person, get that free walk in the woods with them, get a direction, and then find out if you need the services of these other folks.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Dave, we've got one last quick call before you cut, and I think this is going to be another topic that we'll be bringing back.
It is the main thing. If you're thinking about selling timber, take your time, slow down, and get some advice. And this is a great place to go to get that advice and that information.
Yeah. And you know, we've had, like Kingsley said, we have so many questions and such. I think what we'll do is we'll come back to another show and we'll kind of dig in deeper just on topic basis.
Sure.
And
that sounds great.
to where it's even, you know, we're emerald ash borer and things like that. That's huge around here. Yep. So for now, we're out of time. So until next month, we'll talk to you then.